The original constellation figures have been a source of annoyance to modern astronomers, who have naturally failed to trace among the stars the slightest resemblance to the objects they are supposed to represent. To those actively engaged in a study of stellar and constellation influences, however, it will soon become apparent that these seemingly fanciful shapes are in reality a fair representation of the collective influences of the stars contained in them. The rationale of this is inexplicable, and we can only suppose that the originators were in some way led to choose the most appropriate figure. To those of an occult turn of mind, the foregoing explanation will be adequate, but to the scientific investigator it will, of course, have no weight. It must be remembered that a star may have its own effect apart from that of the constellation, which is the group influence of many stars, and therefore the two must be separated when endeavoring to fix the most sensitive points. In practice, it will be found that the effect of the constellation is most marked when the sun, moon, or ascendant is there. Some years ago, the astrologer Sepharial suggested that the zodiac signs themselves might not be the real originators of all the influences ascribed to them, some of which might be more properly attributed to constellations. Thus, in the case of Cancer, the pushy nature of its people may really be due to the constellation Monoceros, the unicorn, and their love of dogs to Canis Major, and their love of the sea to the constellation Argo. This should be borne in mind, for by careful research we may eventually be able to assign more exact influences to both the signs and the stars. In this connection, it will be obvious that the separate influence of each degree of the zodiac may also be this same stellar phenomenon. In the descriptions that follow, the legendary history of the constellations has been given wherever possible, so that students of symbology and occultism may exercise their powers of interpretation. Apis, the bird of paradise. The influence of Apis is said to confer a kind, benevolent, sympathetic, and ambitious nature. This part of the sky has apparently always been associated with birds, for it was known to the Chinese under the names the curious sparrow and the little wonder bird. The connection of Gemini and Sagittarius with flight may possibly be due to this constellation. Cassiopeia, the seated woman. Cassiopeia was the wife of Cepheus and mother of Andromeda, and was taken into heaven in consideration of the deeds of Perseus. She is said to have boasted that not only Andromeda, but she herself was fairer than those Nereids. The Nereids were the attendants to the god Neptune, often shown riding a hippocamp, half horse and half fish. And for that reason she was bound to her chair and condemned to circle the pole head downwards as a lesson in humility. According to Ptolemy, this constellation is of the nature of Saturn and Venus. It is said to give haughtiness, a boastfulness, and an exaggerated pride, but at the same time the power of commanding respect. It is associated by the Kabbalists with the second tarot, the High Priestess. The constellation called the Chameleon has an influence said to give a practical and sound mind with a love of knowledge, a sympathetic and an adaptable nature, and fondness for travel and for the drama. The Corona Borealis, the Northern Crown. Corona Borealis represents the garland given by Venus to Ariadne on the occasion of her marriage to Bacchus. It is said to give artistic ability, the love of flowers, lethargy and disillusionment, but also to bring people to a position of command. It is associated with the fourth tarot, the Emperor. The constellation of Lyra, the Lyre. Mercury found the body of a tortoise washed up on the shore of the Nile. And he discovered that after the flesh was consumed, that by striking the sinews, a musical note could be obtained. He made a lyre of similar shape, having 3 strings, and gave it to Orpheus, who by its music enchanted the beasts, the birds and rocks. After Orpheus was slain, Jupiter placed the lyre in heaven at the request of Apollo and the Muses. The influence of this constellation, according to Ptolemy, Lyra is like Venus and Mercury. It is said to give people harmonious nature and poetical and developed qualities, fond of music and apt in science and art, but perhaps inclined to theft. The constellation Serpens, or the Serpent. When the son of Minos, the king of Crete, was drowned in a barrel of red honey, Asclepius was sent to restore him to life, and was shut in a secret chamber with the body. While he stood wondering what to do, a serpent entered, which he killed. Thereupon another serpent came in bearing an herb, which it placed on the head of the dead serpent, restoring it to life. And Asclepius, using the same herb, succeeded in restoring the son of Minos to life. The serpent was placed in heaven, and for this reason, certain writers have identified the constellation Ophiuchus with Asclepius. According to other accounts, the serpent is one of those that would have slain Hercules in his cradle. The zodiac signs themselves might not be the real originators of all the influences ascribed to them, some of which might more properly be attributed to constellations. This should be borne in mind, for by careful research we may eventually be able to assign more exact influences to both signs and the stars. In this connection, it will be obvious that the separate influence of each degree of the zodiac may also be this same stellar phenomenon.